we used to play Nintendo 64 or like the PlayStation 1 and things like that. And we always wanted a cheat code because we wanted to get to like the next level. And I remember my brother would be like, Sammy, or Sa is what he called me. He's like, I got the cheat code. And we would go to the next level. And then when we beat it, we're like, well, what now? And so a lot of times in dating, we tend to just want the cheat code
to the next level.
We want the cheat code. We're like, okay, how do we get? And then we get to a point where we thought we wanted to be, and we're like, we missed that.
What's up, fam? Welcome back to our channel. My name is Tim. This is my beautiful wife, Pauline, and you are tuning in to another episode of the W Podcast, where you get wisdom in the word with the
Wheelers.
Hey, so we are so excited. We have another amazing guest this week. Honestly, we've never had guests like this before. We are introducing to some people you already know who they are, but Sammy and Brittany Gomes. We're so excited. They're the founding pastors of Frey Church. I hope I said that right. I think I did. I tried to do my homework. Frey Church in Athens, Georgia. It's going to be an amazing church. So if you're in that area, we know we got some people in Georgia.
Definitely.
If you're in that area, we definitely ask you to check it out, and we'll let them share more about that. But without further ado, let me bring on Sammy and Brittany. How y'all doing, fam?
Hey,
good.
How are you?
Doing well.
Welcome.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. Like I said,
Absolutely.
You all are about to drop so many wisdom, and just we're excited because we know that y'all been married for 12 years. I'm getting ahead of myself. I want y'all to tell y'all story, but that's a long time.
That's a lot. Y'all been through a lot. You dated before that, so you guys have known it for a while. But I think that there's so much just trust, I'm sure, that has been built and tested in that time. But we're excited to hear more about y'all love story, how the Lord brought you together, what you've learned, all of those different things. But this is all, even though y'all been married for 12 years, y'all know, y'all listening, this is a dating podcast. So we're gonna get into the beginning. So, and I love when we have both halves of the couple here to verify the story, so there's no like confusion. You have both sides, her side and his side. So Sammy and Brittany, welcome. We would love y'all just start us at the beginning. How did y'all meet?
Yeah, I think you should go with that one.
So we both had gotten out of relationships. We're still teenagers when we first met. And even though we'd gotten out of relationships, I just became a Christian prior. I think back in March, we met in August, and he had grown up in the church. And so I was kind of on this like new high for Jesus, and was kind of like, I'm not going to date anymore. I got myself back in college. And he was kind of doing the same thing. I was like, I'm not going to date. I'm just going to focus on my relationship with God. And my aunt and uncle were the only people that I knew that went to church in my family. So I reached out to them and was like, hey, are y'all still going to church? And they said, yeah. And so I started going with them. And they were like, this guy, Sammy, he's like really great. And I was like, I'm just not really interested. And kind of like your other guest that was on had her list. I had my list of like, has to be taller than me, needs to be older than me. Like I will not date somebody younger than me. And they're like, yeah, he's like 18, 19. And I was like, oh, okay. I was 19, about to go to 20.
So you were a year older than him, or two?
I'm 2 years older than him.
Yeah.
And so my uncle, they did like this youth challenge week thing. And so he got me to be on his team, and Sammy was on the team too.
Yeah.
And they connected us, and then we exchanged numbers that like the end of the challenge week, and then stayed up to like 3, 4 in the morning and chatted. And then
y'all remember the old times, right? Stay on the phone.
Till
4 a.m.
Falling asleep on the phone with each other.
And so after that was kind of like we actually did read this book. I always hate mentioning it now because he went kind of off the railroad tracks. But Boy Meets Girl And it was about courtship. And so we just chose to like really decide to do things differently than what we had done in the past, and really put like our firm foundation on Jesus. And like, hey, we were, going to set strict boundaries around like what our relationship and dating would look like, to hold us accountable, keep us, from the temptations that obviously dating in a serious relationship can bring.
Yep.
And so we wrote that book together. And
long distance relationship, by the way.
Yeah.
I was west coast of Florida, and she was central Florida.
Really?
So it was 2.5 hours difference. So she was central, I was west coast, Bradenton Beach. And so we were reading this book, and then would get on the phone and discuss our notes and how we wanted our relationship to look like. And so it was a cool interaction for sure.
I think, we actually just had a conversation with our oldest daughter the other night about us being different and just holding true to like our convictions and not going based off what society says. And I think if you want something that's different than like what you're used to and what has been in the past, then you have to do things differently. And that is what we chose to do. We chose to, get mentors. We chose to let them know what our boundaries were, how we were going to like stay friends and keep intimacy out of our relationship until we got married, and just a lot of different things that we had set in place. But that was the beginning. I was 19, he was 17. I always told my friends, I was like, you don't need to know how old he is. How like, he's a good guy, he's mature.
Oh, stop it. Oh, stop. I mean, that's the you guys.
It was so funny because her aunt and uncle, they had known me for a while. They were my youth leaders, and they're like, maybe 18, something like that. And I remember her asking me my age, and I still remember the phrase. I was like 17, unfortunately. Like that was literally the phrase. And I didn't know she was asking me. I know, but at the time I didn't know she was asking me the age for that reason. So they were all playing matchmaker in the background. And I'm the 17-year-old kid just walking around youth group, just thinking she just asked me for my age. But because I was always like the baby of the group. So I'm like 17, unfortunately. I mean, I'm 17. But that was it. And I love that her aunt played matchmaker because they also became our mentors.
Wow.
And so and in that season it was needed. Because I was young trying to figure out dating and serious dating, and growing up without a father in the picture my whole life. I'm like, how do I do this? Right? You're figuring that out for yourself. And so a lot of times we literally negate the things we need in the season because we think we can do it better. And I think me staying humble and saying, you know what, I don't know about this dating thing, and it's okay to get mentors. It's okay for them to come on a date with us. It's okay for me to sit with her uncle and her to sit with her aunt and me be across the table from her. It was like she said, we wanted to see something different. And so we did things different. And I think that kind of was the guardrails. Yes, we had moments that we hit guardrails and made some bumps and bruises and scratches, but we still had guardrails.
Right.
And if we want great relationships, I think we need to establish great guardrails. And that comes from people in our lives, but also things we put in place. So.
Okay, so y'all just was bam, 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 giving us all of these gems. I gotta slow down a little bit and go back because I want to make sure we get everything. So you met 17, 19. How long did y'all actually? How long did you actually date?
We dated 2 years. Well, a year and a half. Then I proposed, and then it took the full 2 years. We got married.
So you're engaged 6 months.
Yeah.
Wow, that's okay. So you were almost 19 and 21 when you were married.
Yeah, I got married at 19. She was 21.
You different, bro.
That is brave. What was that like? Because I mean, Brittany, you shared how your aunt and your uncle were the only people close to you who were following the Lord, who were actively kind of like in the community and in church and things like that. So I'm getting the sense that, you know, you didn't have a lot of friends that were following God and probably dating for marriage. You probably were just having a good time and doing what teenagers do. So what was that like for you all? Like, Sammy, were you in the same position where you were like, hey, I'm kind of like, I don't have anybody around me to be supportive of this life that I want to live pursuing Jesus? Like, what was the community factor like? Because not only are you being unusual by following Jesus, but you guys are also essentially teenagers when you meet. Making friends, obviously, friendships are so weird as a teenager with, and then, you know, adding Christ in that. So did you ever feel lonely? What was that like for y'all?
Yeah, I would say definitely I was in a different place. I had a strong community at church. Like she said, I was raised in church, and at the time I was heavily involved in my youth group. I had my youth pastor that was my mentor, that I looked up to, a role model. I had her uncle, I had our senior pastor, our worship leader. There were many older guys that I looked up to and that I hung around with a lot. So I was a teenager, but I think I'm an old soul, and that's what people say a lot. I just hung around older guys and I gleaned from them, and I really like to be around them. So I had a strong community. But as a teenager, I was still like at times with friends, right? I was one step out, one step in. It's like you had the excuse like I'm reaching them, but you never did the reaching. They just grabbed you in, right? And I was like, eventually they'll come to church. So it was like that one step in, one step out. But I think the community I had placed around me kind of still kept me, you know, centered the best that they can. She came from a completely different background. And so that was like, I'm glad we did what we did, because that helped. But if you wanted to share a little bit about that.
I think, you know, again, I feel like we're in the season of like, you know, teaching our oldest daughter about like quality versus quantity. And so I feel like had what we needed in that season. And for me, it was really only my aunt and my uncle that I could really like look at some kind of like godly like relationship. And I didn't really have like too many. I was coming out of like a really not dark season, but like not a great season of life.
You should tell them that, because I think that's going to help a lot of people listening to that. Like, that was dark season, but going a little deeper than that. Because one thing that we had to work on a lot was trust. And that's one thing that people struggle with so much.
Especially now.
Especially now. Yeah. I mean, we dealt a lot of dating and courting face to face. Now people are, there's a lot of different ways to date. And so trust is not easily given or received. And so let them know a little bit about that and how you walk that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in like a broken home. We, you know, my mom has been married several times. My dad's been married several times. And, you know, I don't know how explicit I can be on this like podcast or like what I can say.
Whatever,
so, okay. I'm like a very like transparent like person. It's hard for me. So, and so kind of growing up, it was kind of like, hey, just, you know, don't have sex because like you just shouldn't. It was not really like what is it doing to your heart, and like you're giving away things, and you know the lasting effect it has on you for like, you know, the rest of your life. And I think like, you know, going into relationships, it was, you know, what can I offer you? And so coming into a relationship that was like different, I was like, this guy has to be gay, because like he's not like,
no, that's so
he's
real,
not pursuing me. Huh?
That's so real. Like he doesn't want to sleep with me. Like, what's wrong with him?
He doesn't want to sleep with me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is like, what's wrong with you? Like, is it me? Like, but it was like this whole like mentality shift for me to be like, okay, no, like a guy and a man of God who truly like is looking for a wife and like respects women is like, that's not like their first thought. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Like,
like,
who are you?
It.
Like, it's so strange.
Yeah, exactly. And so just like the trust around, like, you know, I'd been cheated on several times. Obviously, I was young. And, you know, there's just, I mean, there's just so many different things. I mean, I had seen, you know, from close proximity to of like relationships that, you know, had stepped out on affairs and things like that. And so I kind of always just had that mentality that like all men were the same. And like it was bound to happen. And no matter how good, like it just seemed like, you know, at some point in time, this was going to happen. So I would say like the first like 5 years were just like really rough. I saw in one of the question interviews, like, what was our first year of marriage like? And, you know, so many people were like, it's the newlywed phase. It's so great. And I always say like, that was our worst. That was our worst year of marriage. You know, you're taking two broken people and then bringing them together to be one. And there was so much brokenness and so much healing and so much growing up, honestly, that we had to do.
I mean, I was 19, she was 21.
And then we put a baby in the mix, you know.
A year later, we're having our first. A year later, we were having our first baby.
Okay,
I mean,
pregnant.
we were.
Your first
and then we're both working full time. We're both going to school full time, trying to get our college degree. And it was just like,
it's a lot.
It's a lot right now, right? And so what she said about just the trust part was really big, because I had to choose at the age of 17, 18, and 19 to say, no matter how many times you say, I don't trust you with this, I had to commit to say, I am going to do whatever I can to change that.
Change your mind.
And a lot of times in a dating relationship, we just take someone's perception at what it is.
Yeah.
And we may not get committed to it because that was her perception, but it was my job to change that.
Wow.
Because I knew me. She didn't know me yet.
Right.
So I had to tell her, this is who I am. But then I couldn't just tell her, I had to prove it.
Yeah.
And so I had to prove that her perception of me was wrong.
Right.
And so if we feel like it's valuable and if we value the person, we're going to prove to shift their perception. And so, because we want them, right? If it's not valuable, then we'll just let it go.
Right.
And so at 17, 18, and 19, I had to say, I'm committed to this thing.
Yeah. And I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what
were we doing?
What were we doing?
So this is good. And y'all said a couple things in there that I really want to touch on. First of all, thank you for your transparency, your vulnerability. Like, we really appreciate that and we honor it. So, and I do think it's going to help a lot of people. So one, from your perspective, Sammy, you just kind of went into it. How did you get an understanding, or what was it about Brittany that made you be like, all right, she is worth, let's just be honest, like, she's worth this investment? Because there's some people who are watching this and like, bro, you're not doing all that.
Yeah.
It's too much. But for some people, they may need to have to put that investment in order to get the marriage that they're looking to have.
Yeah.
What was it that made you say, this is worth me being able to put in the effort that it takes?
Yeah, that's great, man. I think for me is I'm a very passionate person and I'm a visionary. So I tend to see out, right? And when I first saw her and met her, I just knew like I am going to pursue her, right? And pursuit takes work. I think we tend to lose that value of what pursuit truly looks like. And just like, so get out of relationship real quick. And if we can go into like investing with money, right? We invest in what it would turn out to be in the future.
Okay.
We don't invest for right now, right? We invest in stocks knowing that in 5 years is going to double or triple or quadruple the amount we've put in. And so it's worth it doing right now.
Right.
And I think if we see relationships in the same way, I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I wanted God to do in my life and with my relationship. And so for her, it was more like, man, if I want this girl, I'm going all in because I know what the future is going to look like. I don't want to miss it. That's what I had to commit to. I don't want to miss what God has for us. And I had said, like, God, I don't want anyone. I'm not pursuing anyone unless you bring someone to me. Yeah. That was the caveat I gave to God. And trust me, I wasn't pursuing anyone. God brought Brittany. Like, he literally did. Like, her aunt and uncle were having conversations with her behind my back. Like, they were planning things out. Like, I was just going about my day. I remember I met her after I came back from a mission trip we had with youth ministry. Like, I knew nothing of this. And so God was working in the background, and God brought her to me. And I remember thinking, I can't mess this up. And it was work. Like, it was a lot of crying on my end.
Like it's like a bad thing.
It wasn't a bad thing, but when you look back,
when I look back, I'm like, oh gosh.
You realize, man, how worth it is if you don't just stay stuck in the moment, but you have the vision enough to see in the future of what it could be.
Well, it's just, it's reminding me of the verse where it talks about Jesus, and he was like, I ain't trying to go to that cross, but it says, for the joy set before him, he was able to endure it. And I just kind of what you're saying. And that's real. Like, it does take work, and you do have to be able to see, like, okay, yes, this takes work, but this person is worth it. And I know that what we can do together will be greater than this pain that we're experiencing for this small amount of time. Because, I dated for 2 years. You said the first 5 years or so were kind of rocky, but y'all still got a lifetime. Like, there's still so much runway to go, which is a blessing. Now, Brittany, I would love to switch to you, because you were the one that had to go through the healing process. And obviously, I know Sammy had to heal on his own in some way as well. For this specific situation, because there's some people who have been hurt, and they're listening to this, and they're like, I don't know if I can ever open up my heart to somebody again. Right. So for you, what was that process like to be able to get that healing? How were you able to trust Sammy and be able to begin building that healthy relationship with somebody?
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could say it was in the first year or two of our marriage. And even in, our dating, but it was not, like you said, we ended up start having kids. And, by the way, we have 5 kids. And so.
Oh, a handful. That's a starting lineup. Go team. Go.
Yeah. So it's been a lot. And so, we had our last child, adopted 2019. Yep. And so I was also going through postpartum depression. And so dealing with that, and, still trying to navigate what a healthy relationship marriage looks like. We went to a marriage retreat a couple of years ago now. And, the lady was sharing this story, and she was like, yeah, we were newly married. And her husband was like, we were 5 years in. And she's like, newly married. Yeah. And she's like, we're that first 5 years is so you're still navigating the waters of what it feels like to be married, and then to throw kids into it and moving places. It's still I'm so thankful. We've lasted and what's the word I'm looking for? Just didn't give up basically, because those first few years were really rough. But not having the trust and the hurt, and then going through depression, it got to a point to where it came down to counseling for me, intense therapy, a lot of trauma childhood, and working through that, getting on medication. And so I would say probably the last 5 years have been my healthiest. And also pursuing my relationship with, God, and knowing what he says about me. And then there's still like moments where like insecurity creeps in and where I'm still battling like different things that, I always joke around that like Sammy is pretty much like Jesus, like
that's not
the
true.
earthly. He's not. But like
far from it.
He's far from it. But I always like think about my attitude that I have and all these other things.
I was like, you're so much better than me.
Like, yeah, I'm like, how did I marry this man? And so there's just like a lot of like, you give like the enemy like a little crack and he's like in there like, yeah, you don't deserve him or, all these different things. And so I still am like working on myself and, that's a daily thing. But I'd say, for me, it was intense counseling, therapy and depression medication, to be honest. That really helped me like heal and to be able to see like, God is in the middle of this, basically.
Yeah. And if those that are dating, this is one thing that we were talking about that we wish we did when we were dating. And it's counseling. Like if you know this thing is for real, you don't even have to do it together. Do it for yourself.
Right.
And this is one thing, if we would go back to when we started dating, we would have gone through it individually. And when it got to a point of like serious and proposal, we would have done it together.
Yeah.
And if you're a Christian, if you're not a Christian, what I want to say is don't get stuck in the stigma that counseling means you're weak or that you're all wrong.
Yeah. We call it the talking doctor in our house.
Yeah. And sometimes you just need someone to talk to.
I love
and you need someone that will listen and won't just talk back to you, but can just sit and listen. But I think dating, no matter the age, we should say like, let me work on me.
Yeah.
Even if you're still dating, let me work on me because I want me to be the best for that person.
Yeah.
I want my best self for her best self. And so if that's the case, I'm going to take care of myself. And that may be counseling.
Yeah.
So
that's good. So going back a little bit to something y'all mentioned that I think is worth going into. So you talked about how y'all will be on dates and her uncle is staring you right across the table and y'all are out there. Kind of break that down for us. And really, I'm interested because obviously you all were 19 or 17 when you were dating. And I don't want people to hear this and be like, well, they just did that because they were young and they needed party. Like, for somebody that's 27 and 29 right now, 37, 39, is there value in that for going out with someone's parents or uncles or
older couples?
Kind of walk us through that if it's not just I was a teenager thing.
Yeah. I like this one a lot. I actually was just talking to her. I was like, I think I've made a phrase about it. I think it's dating discipleship. And this is what I mean about that. It's discipleship takes mentor. And if you're going to date and you're going to be developed in it, you need mentors. It's dating discipleship. It's who am I getting around me to disciple me in this dating season and to be with me. And so I think you need to land on a mentor when it's a couple that's older. But I also think you just need friends that's great friends that's accountable. And so I don't just think you need aunt, uncle, mom, dad to sit across from you. I think if you're 27, 28, 29, how great would it be saying, let me write down a list of people I look up to, like future marriage goals. This is what I want it to look like. Oh, their names are in there. Let me pick the one I would love for them to mentor me. Okay, great. Let me call them. Hey, can you do this for me? Okay, now I've landed on that. That's kind of like a one-on-one mentorship thing, right? And then more going on dates and eating and theater, going to watch a movie, going to go to the things like that. Develop your 3 to 5 core friends to be like, hey, if I need you, you're all my favorites. If we're going out, I would love for you to come with. Would you commit to that? I think you need a core that will commit to being with you during the dating season to say, I got you. I got your back. Because we were young and her aunt and uncle were there for us because we were still teenagers. But I think if you're 25, you have people there too. It doesn't have to look like family.
Yeah, I think though, going back to like the book that we read, I believe they were older, like the couple that was in the book.
Yeah.
But it goes back to like, you know, if you are, I think one of the things they had said in the book was like, you know, we're not going to be in like his apartment, you know, by ourselves. Like temptation, like settings, like if we go out to eat, like we'll drive separately to go there. If we don't have like a, you know, a friend that's going with us or we're not going on a double date, it's basically like having those people. Yes, mentors are great, but that part was also like for a temptation accountability set up for us, because we did want to wait until marriage to have sex, and so that was a big thing for us. So like if it was a movie theater, you know, sometimes they're like really populated, sometimes there's not, and so we just wanted to make sure like we had people with us, and then like, you know, not staying together at night, and you know, different things like that that would feel like a setting that would make it more intimate, that we always wanted to make sure we had people, because that is like a part of life, and that is something God has created for us, and it's an enjoyable part of life, and that's something that the enemy and the world around us is just like, hey, do it because you can, and you know, test it out before, kind of theory. And so
yeah, it's taking your time being friends.
Yeah,
like dating should be a beautiful season, getting to know each other as friends. And your goal is that we get to such a place that we are calling each other best friends.
Yeah.
If you can't call yourselves that, and so nothing else will come that will be healthy from it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in dating, we skip to what we want from the person instead of learning from them. And so like, if you don't know their color, their favorite color, you shouldn't move forward.
Right. Like you haven't talked enough. You haven't had enough conversation.
You don't know. Yeah.
So one of the craziest things to me that I always am like, you know, we have friends that are like, oh yeah, you know, she wanted 5 kids and I only wanted 1. I'm like, y'all didn't talk about that before you got married?
Oh,
like,
you mean they're married now and they're just
they're married now, and they're like figuring out now that like they didn't want as many kids as the other one wanted. And I'm like,
that's a big difference. Yeah. I mean, y'all know.
It's a big difference. Yeah. Take time to hash things out. That's like a beautiful season. Hash it out. Say, this is what I want. Okay, this is what you want. Okay, where do we land? What do we want it to look like? I think it's like, you know, when we used to play Nintendo 64 or like the PlayStation 1 and things like that, and we always wanted a cheat code because we wanted to get to like the next level. And I remember my brother would be like, Sammy, or Sa is what he called me. He's like, I got the cheat code. And we would go to the next level. And then when we beat it, we're like, well, what now?
Right. Or you get
like, we didn't enjoy any of it.
Keep cheating to move forward because you didn't put in the time to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't enjoy it. And so a lot of times in dating, we tend to just want the cheat code
to the next level.
We want the cheat code. We're like, okay, how do we get? And then we get to a point where we thought we wanted to be, and we're like, we missed that.
Yeah.
And so it's better to take time to get to a point where get to a point that you're like, oh man, I missed that. Oh man, I wish I could go back now. Right. Instead of saying, you know what, this is a beautiful season to get to know each other. Right. And let's do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's get to a point where we can call each other best friends.
Yeah, I love that. And like you said, that takes intentional work. It takes intentional questions. And if you're somebody listening or watching right now, you're like, I don't even know what questions to ask. Like, we actually have resources for you on our website. We are just
great.
Where you can go, and we have questions for everything from family to boundaries to communication to emotional intimacy. So there's resources out there, even if it's not us. Like, please just find some questions. Google some Christian couple questions that you can
date night
ask
questions
with each other.
Yeah.
Because I did that as well. Like that really helped us when we were dating. We made sure that we would sit down. We're waiting for our food to come. We pulling up questions to ask each other. And sometimes you may not feel like it, but it's good because it forces you to learn how to communicate.
Right.
Because you're going to need to be able to talk and see how people process and, well, how do you talk when you're not in a good mood? And it's just good to learn.
I mean, I think it's even so huge, Brittany, that you were bringing up how some people, don't have like really, really key conversations, before they get married about what the other person wants. And honestly, just asking themselves what they want. Because some people don't know how many kids they want, or they don't know, like certain, parts of their life. And that's okay too, of course. But I think that just like you were saying, Sammy, so much we want to rush. And I think that learning how to sit and be still, and y'all have older kids than we do, so I'm sure you went through that whole process of this is it's time to calm down. Just kind of be present, because if you rush through dating, then you're gonna want to rush through the newlyweds phase. You're gonna rush through, every single phase of your marriage, and you're gonna get bored. That's one of the beautiful things I think about building your friendship in the dating stage too, because you guys do have to learn how to hang out. You got to learn. By God's grace, the sex will be great, but that's not going to take up your whole day. Most of the time you're going to be talking, texting on the phone. You got to learn how to make bills funny. You got to learn how to watch each other's shows. You have to learn how to be friends. That's what really is going to matter, because I think the enemy does such a good job of distracting us and making us think the romance and the intimacy and the sex, so many people are so concerned about that, oh, we don't have chemistry. And it's well, first of all, this science class, what the heck, you're a guy, I know. Chances are, if you take the time to get to know somebody, you're gonna find things you like about them. It's just, of course, a matter of, is this who God has for you? But I think it's so good, because people, especially I think the older we get, people do rush more and more, because they're oh, my fertility clock, there's no option.
100%.
But it's still and I think people, your guys' story, you dated for a year and a half. It's really not a long time. It's not a short time, but it's not an excessive, we know some couples who dated 6-7 years, but I think it's a good kind of picture. Our story is similar. We dated for a year and a half, but it's similar. It's a good picture, because it's not really about the time you date. Some people what's an appropriate time to date, what's too short, what's too long. But I think no matter how long you date, you can't skip steps. And if you have really good conversations, some people, they're moving, they're getting to know each other. They're kind of the Lord is speaking, they're community involved. They're doing all the things they need to do, and they're married or engaged in 3 months. But then other people have been together 7 years and they don't talk about anything. And you don't know, what have y'all been doing? I don't get it. You've been distracted the whole time. So
we're just sitting here.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's really true. So talked about how you all had accountability in your life. You had mentors. And one of the things I want to touch on with you all, because I mentioned it in the beginning, you all are launching a church, which is really exciting and amazing. And we have a lot of people on here who are in church, who are serving. I just kind of want to talk about that world, because we hear from a lot of people who honestly, they're not happy with the relationship between the church and dating and
they want their pastor to set them up.
I'm curious, from your perspective, obviously you've been in church for a while, working in different capacities, about to have your own church soon. What role do you think the church should play when it comes to dating and people's journey in that respect?
I think the first thing is, I think the church needs to get to a place where we don't shame the single. That's the first step, right? Because you have to first be single in order to start dating.
Right. That's how you're born.
And so, yes. And so I think that's the first step, because the reason why I say that is because I think a lot of times we force or just try to rush everyone to get married. And I understand the intention behind that. I really do. And I love that. But it's just what you were saying, right? In dating, it takes steps. In getting ready to date, it takes steps, right? And so what I always told some of my students before they started dating, I was like, don't rush what you are not refined for. Like, you are not ready for it, and that's okay. It takes refinement, right? And I think in the church, we need to put more resource in preparing people to date than forcing them to start dating. It's different. You're preparing them for what to come instead of just telling them get in it and learn while you're at it.
Yeah.
And so it's how do we develop resources? I was just telling Brittany, we were talking about, we see a lot of community groups, right? That are like single groups or married couple groups or everyone welcome, men, women. We never hear of dating community groups.
Yes.
Why don't we have that?
Yeah, it's funny because that's literally our story.
Yeah.
Like, that's how this whole page, YouTube, podcast came about. Like, when we were dating, we were asking that same question.
Yeah.
You know, that was what, 7 years, a while ago. And it's like, where are the groups? Where's the information? Where are the books just for us? That's part of the reason why we call it just dating. Yeah, because we want to be able to focus on people who are dating. And we actually started a connect group or a small group when we were just dating. And we just had other people who were dating. And it's so funny because, like you said, so many times it's singles or it's married, it's co-ed, and there'd be people like, can I join? I'm not in a relationship. And we were like, no, like, this is just for people who are and like they didn't get it. But like you said, there's no space for those people. And I think that's valuable.
Yeah.
I agree. I just want to say
Yeah, 100%. And as we talk more about, I pray that we create that space. And we are in a town that's a college city. I mean, a big school and a lot of young adults, a lot of college students, a lot of trying to figure out this dating world. Right. And we were just talking with a few students not too long ago, and they were like, we weren't ready for this. Like, we weren't ready. We weren't prepared for this. It was like, just go, you're 18, 19, figure out college and figure out dating and who you're supposed to be. Like, we wish we were prepared for this. And so I think the church just needs to create an environment which is shame-free of like where I am, right? I read this thing for Valentine's that was like, we tend to put so much hype around singleness during Valentine's Day. And Jesus was single and did far more than anyone could ever do. Yep. And he was single and never married. But it was just funny to see. I started laughing. But it's that. And then creating space for dating groups, creating space that, you know, also like, I know churches that do events and almost like big conferences for like marriage, right? Can we do conference for dating? Yeah. Can we do events for dating? Can we create a space where they come and they actually mingle and get to know each other? I think the church is a great place for that. I think we don't do a lot of that because we're like, you know, but we're putting them together. Are they going to turn out okay? Are they going to sin? Are they going to sleep with each other? Yeah, it's all of that. So then we're limiting them because we're putting limitations on us. And I believe God has given us a space to give them freedom to say, you're in this place, you're not perfect. I'm in this place where I'm not perfect, but it's church. Can we work this out? So that's what I would say about that.
I love that. And it's so interesting because I feel like y'all perspective on this topic is really good because you did try to date really well. And I wonder if and you did date for, you know, some length of time. Sometimes a lot of pastors, it seems like there may be a disconnect from dating because one, either they dated really quick, like they were married in 6 months.
Yeah, you're about to get ordained, hurry up and find somebody.
Or their dating story maybe wasn't the cleanest or wasn't the best, and they don't really want to focus on that area because maybe they don't feel like they're an example. Like, we know older couples who or just people in general who are married that don't want to talk or help people with dating because they didn't do it well. But it's like, well, let's help other people not make that same.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's really needed.
Yeah. I love what you were saying about like being even prepared to date, because like, I mean, just as you all shared what your lives looked like or what you were coming out of before you met each other, like that's so many people's story where it's like, yeah, I mean, most of the time people, of course, like your first person you date is not going to be the person you marry. And even if that is it's kind of messy in between. Like nobody, like when you become an adult, like nobody teaches you how to do taxes. Nobody teaches you how to budget. Nobody teaches you how to date. Like you're just out here figuring out, like, oh, do we kiss now? Like, are we supposed to have sex? Like, this is what I saw on TV. Like, what's supposed to happen? Like, literally, like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like, how do I go about this? And like, it's just so awkward. And then you just stuff happens, and you just are like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't know. I think it's so good, but because we just do such a good job of like preparing for so many other things in culture, like how we have pre-K and there's pre-K 2, there's pre-K for the pre-K before you even go to kindergarten, and kindergarten's not even really school, so it's all
100%
preparation for that. Like this, we don't on-ramp well, and I think that what we found is like friendship is such a good place for that, because people will ask, well, how do I prepare for marriage? And I'm like, well, I mean, there's only so much you can do, because like you all were saying, you're getting to know each other, yourself, and then you're getting to know the person, and then by the time you get to know them, they change, and then it's you know 100%. Journey. But I think that friendship is such a good place for that, and it's something that I think honestly the church can do a better job of as well, as like highlighting that versus like, okay, find a wife, find a husband, like, you know, that's kind of where your life begins, is when you get married. But if you're not a good friend, dating's going to be really hard, and then marriage is going to be even harder, you know, in space. But I think that it's such a good point of like, okay, if you do want to get married, just like a lot of us grow up, at least I grew up knowing I wanted to go to college. Well, great, you got to graduate high school first, and then you got to finish middle school. You can do that. Like it's a process.
That's good.
It
is. I think you said something that was so great. It's like the pre-K and the pre-K and the pre-K, and then you finally go to kindergarten. It's like the friendship and the dating is the baby stage of your forever relationship. Like, think about it that way. And if you have a baby, you're not giving them solid foods yet. You're giving them baby food because they cannot eat for themselves. And so they shouldn't have what their body is not ready for. Right. And because they're developing. And so the friendship and dating stage is the same way. So nurture that friendship. Nurture it with baby food, not solid food yet. And if that's hard to comprehend, it's like, hey, it's like holding hands is probably okay right now to do, and be okay with that for baby stage. It's probably not time to make out. Right. Let's not skip to solid food yet. It's just like knowing that friendship stage, baby stage, but it's so beautiful because what you develop during baby stage is that nurturing moment and how they grow up. And so how your dating will develop is how you nurture that baby stage in your dating life. And so I think you saying that, I'm like, how do we have 4 pre-Ks before kindergarten? Because we know it's needed.
That's true. And I like I don't know the research on it of like how well do kids do in school if they do go through those other, you know, processes or whatever the case is. And like, you know, how much stronger would our marriages be if we learned how to be good friends before we became good boyfriends and girlfriends and became good fiancés. And it kind of goes back to what was mentioned earlier about like, you know, skipping steps. And Brittany, you shared about, you know, how we all have trauma and things to heal from our childhood and from growing up. And a lot of that is because we're given things that we're not ready for. Like you were saying, I mean, having sex before marriage, like sex is a good thing, just like you said, but if you have it out of its place and becomes, you know, detrimental because you did it too early. And same even with making out, it's like, are you
are you ready for that? Because that may lead to something like, you know, that may lead to steak, and you're a toddler. You're not ready for steak.
That's so good, because I think it all boils down to like self-awareness, like even knowing where you're at. The Lord asking Adam and Eve, where are y'all at? Like, like God.
That's so good.
That's one of the biggest, I think, things that's been highlighted is like, you have to even know what you're ready for. You have to know where you are. And Brittany, that goes back to what you were sharing about, going to counseling, having those conversations, even being able to have an awareness of, hey, I went through this and this is how it affected me. And this is how it's affecting my marriage and my parenting now. But so many of us are in denial about like, I don't want to touch that, because it is very painful, of course, like go back to your and it takes so much courage and bravery to do that.
100%.
So worth it, to be honest about where you are, especially if you want to be married. So if you're watching this, I do want to be married, because you try to run from yourself, but everywhere you go, there you are, and your spouse is
and then you have kids and they show up, they're little mini-me's.
They're looking and sounding like you, and you're like, where'd you get that from?
So we've been talking on, this may be the last question. We'll see how it goes, because y'all just be giving little dimes and we be having to follow it. But we're talking about preparing for marriage. And I think an underrated way to prepare for marriage is actually by serving in the church. And I don't know if you agree with that, but if you do, I would love to hear from your perspective, because unfortunately, we're selfish. Unfortunately, we're selfish. And a lot of people need to know what's in it for me before they do it. And, the Bible even talks about like the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. Like it's hard for people to be able to serve at church. And I'm just curious if maybe there's a disconnect. People don't realize that as you refresh others, so you are refreshed. Like people don't realize that there is some reciprocity there. I butchered that word. Reciprocity?
I don't know what you're trying to say.
Reciprocal. I'm trying. There's a word for that.
Reciprocity.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
I did get a degree.
I don't Google all the knowledge.
Right. So, but in all seriousness, I'm just curious from your perspective, as someone who is about to launch a church, someone who's spent most of your life so far really serving and building God's church, I feel like there's so many people who are missing out on that aspect of their life. I'm just curious what your perspective is on that.
Go ahead.
I mean, we have pretty much served almost our entirety of our relationship, from dating till married. And we were talking about this question earlier. And, I think my love language is acts of service. And so I think having a spouse that has that love language, serving within the church, we all have the excuse of I'm busy or I don't, so one thing that kind of just irks my nerves is like when we were full-time like ministry staff at another church, we have 5 kids that had to wake up early, get to church before all the volunteers got there. And then, somebody walks in with their Starbucks cup and like, I'm late or I can't make it. And I'm like, looking at my kids running around
5 hours.
And I'm just like, we all have excuses. And I'm, if you can get your kids to school on time during the week, if you can get to work on time during the week, then like you can make church a priority and get to church on time. And I think like just seeing what it has done like for our marriage to be able to like serve each other and to not make those excuses, because I could wake up one morning and be like, I'm not going to make your coffee because I have something else to do, or I'm not going to make breakfast for us this morning because I just don't feel like it, or I slept too late, or I feel like serving in a different capacity within church just helps us to be able to serve our family well, our marriage as well, because it's sacrifice. Like we have to know what's important to us. And, to be able to see my kids like serving in different capacities, even though, 4 of them out of the 5 are not even technically serving age. But to see them, stuff goodie bags and things like that, is like teaching them at a young age of like what it looks like to serve people that you may not even ever meet, and how that like, trickles into our home of how we serve each other. And we're constantly serving because that's what God, called us to do.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's the simplicity in scripture when it says, you know, when scripture says Jesus came down to serve, he said, I came down to serve, not to be served.
Okay.
So, and that was God sending Jesus, basically himself in flesh, right? His son. But it also in scripture says God is love. And so if you try to connect both, right? God is sending his son. And the main thing he's saying, why I came is to serve.
Yeah.
And who I am, my identity is love. So serving is tied to love.
Yeah.
We can't do one without the other.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? Because it's a part of our identity. It was a part of who God is, right? He is love and he's made to serve. And so I think in the same way, if we are to love people well, we are made to serve them well.
Wow. Yeah.
And that starts really well in the church, in the local church, because it develops a character of honor as well. You know, we honor each other by deciding to serve each other. And that looks like really you develop that a lot in the church because you're serving people you don't really know.
You don't know.
You're serving people that church is still a people business. You're serving people that on Sundays they're not in their best mood at times, right? But you're a smiling face. Right. You're hugging, you're high-fiving, you're saying, what do you need? You're helping with children's ministry. You're helping with this. You're leading things. It's just developing this servant leadership inside of you that when you get in a relationship with someone, you know how to serve them well. You're like, okay, they need me to help them.
Yeah. Wow.
They need me to do what I don't want to do, but I choose to because I value and honor them.
Yeah.
That's what serving is all about. Is a lot of times serving is not what we want to do, but it's what we need to do because of value. Like we value each other. If I'm going to value her, I'm going to serve her.
Right.
And she can know how much I value her by how my servant heart is towards her.
Yeah.
Right. And so man, if you're watching this and you have an opportunity and you have been putting it off, you need to start serving in your local church.
Yeah.
And trust me, through serving,
if you're
you may find the person that's been praying for you because they want someone to serve with them. And so, especially if you're a guy listening, man, if a girl sees you serve, you're a whole nother level now.
Oh, yeah.
These are some steps you can skip. That's a good way of skipping. It's starting to serve. You'll skip that step of like, is he good? Is he okay? Is he well enough to start talking to me? Yeah. And so I just think there's a lot of value in that. But I mean, it's what God has called us to do. And so if we want to love people well, we first need to vertically be in tune with who God has called us to be.
Yeah. One of our favorite phrases within the last year, which we got from the show New Amsterdam. I'm not sure if you guys have ever watched that, but it's how can I help? And so starting that within serving within the church of how can I help?
Mentality.
Mentality. And then bringing that home as well in our marriage. That's been a question that we've just asked more of how can I help? And so I think when we ask that phrase, wherever we are, whatever setting we are, it just opens up new doors and new opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love it. And I love what you both said. And Brittany, you said something that made me think of this thought, because you mentioned how it's easy for us to take our kids to school on time, or it's easy for us to show up to work. I think sometimes the disconnect is we feel like those are things we have to do, whereas church can feel like that's not something I have to do. And I think one way to maybe change your perspective, if you're somebody listening and you struggle with this, is whenever you do something you don't have to do, that takes your relationship to the next level. So for example, if you're serving and you're doing something you don't have to do, that's going to take your relationship with God to another level, because he's going to begin to show you things that he couldn't show you when you weren't serving, because you weren't going to have the same opportunities to discover the purpose that God's put inside you. Now let's take it and get to a relationship. When you do things that you don't have to do in a relationship, that takes it to the next level. When I decide to pick up Pauline's plate and wash it, I didn't have to do that. But that's just going to take it to a whole nother level, because now she feels love. She feels like I'm being selfless, and that's going to help our intimacy grow, not just in the bedroom, but emotionally connected.
Trust every opportunity, and even like when you're dating, like or even if you're trying to attract a mate, going above and beyond, like those are the type of things where it's like, okay, like you're making yourself noticeable. Like when you have a service, and even. I feel like when you were talking about, like serving and kind of like exercising that muscle of generosity, it reminded me of y'all's story of dating and meeting, how Sammy, you said like, okay, well, I have to prove to her that I'm trustworthy and that, I'm not like other guys. And like, she has I have context as to why she thinks this, but all right, bet like this is the challenge. Like I'm about to show her that I'm different, but I think that takes that you had a heart of service, and that you're like, all right, what does she need from me? She needs me to prove to her that I am trustworthy. I need to say something, and I need to do what I'm going to say. But I think a lot of times, like culture tells us with dating, it is like you mentioned, like, oh, well, what can this person offer me? And we kind of, it's like that soft life, like everyone's kind of like, okay, well, I want this to be easy. But then an easy dating experience doesn't prepare you for a difficult marriage. It doesn't prepare you for a strong marriage. It doesn't prepare you for a marriage that is filled with trust. And I think that it is so easy for people to jump ship when you don't have those, I don't want to call them moments of conflict, but like just like that, those tough seasons, and like that trust of like, okay, no, he proved himself to me. I can remember back when we were dating that he learned this about me, and his response was, I'm still here, versus like, I had to kind of hide myself, and I kind of had to like pacify what I went through so that he wouldn't, like freak out. But I think that having that heart of service, and like you said, because when you serve in church, people are crazy. I mean, and that's okay, because we were all crazy. We were all those crazy people too.
Oh, 100%.
We all had our first day. We all had our time, that we needed it.
Yeah.
Be there for somebody else, and reminding yourself of like, hey, like, all right, I'm going to treat everyone like it's their first time, and kind of like God's mercies are new every morning. And that's something that I've been trying to pray over myself every morning of like, all right, yesterday was a hard day. Like today's a new day. Like we're going to try again, and having that mindset, like in marriage, in dating, in friendship, in serving in church, like it kind of is, like you said, the prep, and you do get to be great friends. Because as y'all know, I mean, one of the things we tell our students in Just Dating University is like, we don't just want y'all to get married. We want you guys to not get divorced. So it's not just about, finding somebody who's cute and meets your list and they're saved enough and like, all right, cool, let's hurry up before my and get married before my eggs dry up. It's more about like, all right, cool, like you found someone, what are you gonna do with them? Like, like you guys are gonna live together, you're gonna be married. Like it's so much more fun being with somebody who does have a heart to serve, instead of you feeling like it's like pulling teeth, like literally with our toddler Joshua, like, oh my gosh, like why do I have to do things over and over and over again? You don't want to feel like you're married to somebody like that. Like, why do I have to tell you to do dishes every 5 minutes? Like you should want to do this. You should want to help. We all have teenagers, or we all were teenagers, and we had that, that time. But I think like it's so funny, because as an adult, I think we can convince ourselves like, I'm past the point of service. I have a job. I have this. I have that. Like I shouldn't have to do all these things. But it's like, no, this is what you signed up for. And even you saying like, okay, this person is a helper. And as females, like that's literally what the Lord calls us, is helpers. Yeah. And it's like, am I helping now? Like, do I see myself as a helper now? Because if I don't, as a single woman, it's going to be a lot harder transition, when I do start dating and then when I get married.
Yeah. And it's developing sweat equity and resilience, right? And so like, I also want to put this in here because I think this will go a long way. So develop sweat equity and resilience on big things and small things. And the reason why I'm saying this is because you want to serve in a big way, but you don't want all your serving to look big, right? You want to serve in the small details that you may not think is doing anything or showing anything, but actually means more to the person. And so, and a lot of this is developed in the church as well, but can go outside of the church. And so one way to develop that doesn't have to look big is when you're dating, gentlemen, are you opening the door, the car door, to the person you're dating? Are you opening the door to the restaurant? Or are you walking behind them and they're opening the door and walking in? And then you're like, oh, hold that. I need to go in too. Are they holding the door for you, or are you holding the door for them? It's like, you know, when even with ladies, serving in a small way that may not look big is, are you willing to say the honest thing instead of beating around the bush and getting a guy confused because they don't know what you're thinking about? That's serving them. That's helping them. So they don't have to be confused, but they can trust that you're willing to speak in an honest way that
have their back.
And have their back. And so are you willing to just serve in ways that it's between you and them? No one else may see it. It may look small, but it actually means something more, right? Because if I'm going to open the door for you to get in the car, that means I've built resilience. When it's something big, I can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's so good, because I think that like it's so easy to kind of like work our lives out of these opportunities to serve, right? Especially if you live alone, or you just live, maybe you have a roommate, or you live in a situation where like you don't have to serve anybody. And I think that's one of the things people say, and this isn't of course to shame anybody who's like, you know, maybe you're older than what you want to be as a single person, but like it's one of the worst things is when you live alone for a long time, and even when you stop serving for a long time, because obviously things happen, season, you know, you have kids, like whatever, transitions, and you have to take a break from serving. But it's like, don't stay there too long, because you're gonna your muscles are gonna get weak. Your serving muscles will go away, they'll diminish, they'll deplete if you don't use them anymore. And then it's like, you know, you're believing God for something, and a lot of times, like just like you were saying, being prepared, like a lot of times God doesn't give us stuff because it's not good for us. It's not because he doesn't want us to be married, or he doesn't want us to have children. It's because if I give this to you, it will break you, and I want to be a blessing to you. He wants good for us more than we want it for ourselves. So sometimes we have to kind of ask ourselves, like, okay, well, if this isn't happening for me, you know, why is it? Why is that? What does the Lord want to do in me? And that's what I heard when you were talking about serving in the church and just having a heart of service. It's like, it's not really about, like you said, what can we get? All right, y'all want me to show up at 6 a.m. and move cars, drive vans and all these things. Like, what's gonna get out of it for me? Oh, you're promising me a spouse? It's like, no, but I know that the Lord will work something in you that will make you better, and you'll like who you are. And then you'll attract, you know, in God's timing, you'll attract somebody that you know, will like the better version of you too.
So good.
So I mean, this has been really good. I'm so grateful for all of the gems that y'all drop. I really think somebody's gonna get a lot of value from this. Is there any final thoughts that you all have about anything that you may have said tonight, or anything that came to your mind? And if not, or even if you do have that afterwards, you can share as much as you want about your church and how people can connect with you all. But if you have final thoughts, definitely do that. If not, you could just go straight to the, you know, your church and everything else.
Awesome. Do you have anything else?
No, I mean, I think this has been great. It's been, you know, I love like reflecting back on our like, you know, beginning stages, and just to see like where we are now, like all the hard work that we've like put into our marriage, and the continued hard work, because even though we're almost 12 years into it, it doesn't mean that it's any easier. You know, we're tackling new hurdles now. And so like, what does it look like now for our 12-year marriage to like, you know, leave everything behind, and then, you know, be living off savings to go start a church and move our family to another state, and So there's always new hurdles. If you're growing, that's, if we're not staying complacent. And so I'm just always really grateful that we put in all the hard work that we have and are continuing to do it. So,
and still not done. A lot of hard work left. And I would say, don't despise small beginnings.
Okay.
When it comes to dating, don't despise small beginnings. It may look like nothing now, but the things you put in place, the hard work, the staying in it, developing yourself, staying true to the process. It's all small. It looks like small beginnings, but if you have a vision of who God wants you to be, your best self for someone else, you're going to stay in it. And I would also say, spend time dating you. Spend time dating you before you start dating someone. And if you're in a season of dating and you're in a relationship, still take time to date you. What I have the mental picture is, what would it look like to reserve dinner for yourself? You walk into a restaurant by yourself, you sit down at a table by yourself, the waitress is asking who's coming, and you're like, it's me and myself. And you actually spend the time dating you. Who am I? Who do I want to become? Where's my relationship with God? How do I want to grow? How do I want my dating life to look like? How do I want my marriage to look like? Who am I to my spouse? It's dating you before dating others. And I think that would be valuable if more of us take time to do that. And not just when you get married, it's done. I think that needs to be ongoing. You need to one, keep dating your significant other, and you need to keep dating you. And it's a work thing, and that should never stop.
Yeah, that's really good.
So I was just gonna go into the church real quick.
Absolutely. Let us know how we can go.
Wrap this up.
Frey Church. You said it right, Tim. So happy for that. Let's go.
So it's FRAIS. Means fresh, and I'm gonna mess it up because our campus pastor is French, right?
Fresh in French.
One of our people kept saying Latin, and I almost said it.
I know, they messed it up. But it means fresh in French, and it's directly connected to our vision statement, and the mission of our church is we want people to experience the love and grace of Jesus in a fresh way. And so Frey means fresh. It's the same meaning, but a new way of expressing it. And we believe it's the same Jesus, but you're experiencing him in a fresh way. And so we would just love, if you're in Georgia, if you're in Athens, to connect with us. We would love to connect with you. Coffee on us. We'll buy your coffee. We'll buy your lunch, whatever it takes, but we just want to love on you and get to know you. And we believe that God has called us to just really create a community where Jesus is freshly revealed to you through authentic and meaningful relationships. I think we tend to skip through what relationship really means to the body of Christ. And we want to create an opportunity and an environment where you can really get deep in a relationship. And I believe then you'll start seeing what God can do through you in that as well.
I love that. I love that.
April 2nd, we have our first social meeting, interest meeting. And then we launched September 17th of this year, and fundraising and all the things. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work, a lot of all the things, right now. We have no idea what we're doing.
You're doing it.
We're doing it. Kind of like marriage at the beginning. Like, you have no idea what you're doing. And no idea what you're doing when you have kids. And I feel like that's what we're doing right now. It's just kind of like, okay.
All those things prepared y'all for this.
All of it.
No, I love the name. I love the meaning behind it. I think that's amazing. And I definitely believe a lot of people are going to get that fresh revelation that they need. So what are the socials where they can connect with the church and then connect with you all if people are like, I want more information?
Yeah. Instagram account at Frey Church. We're in a great spot right now because no one has our name, so we can use Frey Church for everything. But Instagram account at Frey Church,
Yeah.
Facebook.com/Frey Church. And what was that?
Spell it for everybody one more time.
FRAIS. FRAIS. The S is silent.
Yep.
But yeah, Frey Church.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check that out. Even if you feel led right now to support, they have a website where you can go on there, and I'm sure there's an option for you to support.
There is.
Yeah.
Big fundraising goal too.
FreyChurch.com.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you feel led, definitely bless them, because we need more people out here.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
To be able to help others receive the love of God in a fresh way. So I love it.
That's great.
Yeah.
This has been another episode of the W Podcast. We know you got something out of it because we got something out of it. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this video.
To get more Christian relationship advice, subscribe to our channel.
And make sure you check out our other videos as well.